Uh-oh.
In her last two fights. Good way hitting him from that way down.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, and now it's time for our weekend recap. We're going to kick it off with the super bantamweight title fight between Nina Hughes, the then champion, and Shernika Johnson, the challenger. The challenger I picked to win a points decision, which she did, though not in the fashion I thought she would, where I thought Shernika would be more cerebral, on her toes, behind her jab. She was stepping into it, barreling forward, bullying the smaller and older Nina Hughes. She spent far more time in the pocket than I thought she would.
She made Nina look her age.
Coming forward, catching and shooting out of the high guard, straight jabs down the middle, jabs that were consistently finding a home from the start to the finish. Nina Hughes was ripping combinations and doing her best to try and get Shernika off of her, but she couldn't. Most of Nina Hughes' combinations were landing on the arms, the elbows, the gloves. The punches weren't really getting in, and she wasn't getting through as much as she needed to. So even though Shernika Johnson won the fight on points like I said she would, it's the fashion. She didn't do it how I thought she'd do it.
She did it.
A far more physical approach than what I expected, than what I predicted. I thought she would be on her toes, using her height, using her length, staying behind her jab, and walking Nina Hughes into punches. It was the opposite. She chose to rough her up. She chose to be physical.
Overpowering the smaller, older fighter and exposing her age in the process, which is a good strategy. It does work.
That's how Jessica McCaskill beat Cecilia Breakhouse years ago. That's how Shernika Johnson just beat Nina Hughes many years later, effectively becoming a two-division champion. She was IBF champion at 122. Now she's WBA champion at 118.
The prediction stuck, though not for the reasons I said it would.
Now that she has effectively unseated Nina Hughes for the WBA title, I would give Shernika Johnson very good odds to also beat Miyo Yoshida, this division's reigning IBF champion.
The one who beat Ebony Bridges late last year.
I think Shernika Johnson would beat her too. I think she'd dominate Miyo Yoshida too. It's Dina Thorsland she has to worry about. It's Dina Thorsland.
More multi-layered, more multifaceted than most fighters you'll find at or around these weights, and she, like Shernika, is a two-division champion. She's just unbeaten.
Cross that bridge when we get to it, if we get to it. But Shernika fought an excellent fight, an aggressive fight, a physical fight. It was beautiful.
Drug testing should be mandatory, but it should be mandatory full stop. Do you know what I mean?
But it's not in most of the world. I mean, I agree with you, but it's
I'm
not in most
saying.
of the world.
It's not, and that's reality. And don't wait until after the fight, well after the fight, to start harping about anti-doping testing when that's something you have to situate beforehand. If you don't,
You're the champion.
you agreed to this. Under whatever auspices and whatever circumstances this fight was fought, it was something you agreed to. So don't complain about it now.
Dangerous,
I
mate.
think at least if I didn't turn this, Judge.
Listen, this is a single mum with two little boys. This is a single mum with two little boys who's 41 years old. Who's fought her heart out for that, Bill.
And there was no drug testing for this fight.
We
There was
put a
none.
trust in this man.
This is the first we've heard of it. I didn't hear Nina or anybody complaining about the lack of drug testing for this fight up until it was over.
I'll say it again. You agreed to this.
Are you implying that Shernika Johnson won the fight, only won the fight because she's a dirty fighter? Is that what you're saying, since now you're bringing this up?
And we put our trust in everyone else, and I feel like we've been fucked over.
And you got to be bigger and better than most of the world.
Yeah, this
Okay, there's no drug testing in most of the world.
When we were able to rectify it, we rectified it, and that's all.
But then I've been
That's
told by
true.
3 people today,
That's
the WBA, I've been told by you, Lou, with all respect, I've got, listen, I'm not having a go, it is what it is, and another person, yeah, and they're all saying to us, well, you should have kept the Australian. Why?
Because they were better judges. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I'm saying that because there were better judges. That happens to be a fact. The judge with the fucked up score was the neutral judge, one of the neutral judges that was demanded. That score, there is no way in the world either girl. That was not an 8.
I don't want to seem insensitive to Nina Hughes' plight, but I talked about this ahead of this fight. I talked about how Nina Hughes left Let's Go Management, Nina Hughes left Matchroom Boxing, and this is what she signed up for.
Thinking what? That the grass was going to be greener on the other side? Let's get one thing clear.
Let's get it straight. Nina lost that fight. She lost that fight on the scorecards. She lost it fair and square. Seemed a very easy fight for me to score. Shernika Johnson was bossing it. She was out-fighting, out-dogging, out-muscling Nina Hughes. That's how she won. But if you wanted the added peace of mind that anti-doping testing provides, perhaps you shouldn't have left Matchroom, because they do a lot more anti-doping testing than Lou DiBella. They do a lot more anti-doping testing than anyone else in the industry.
That's the truth.
I'm not proposing that Nina Hughes and just every single fighter has to stay with Matchroom for the entire duration of their career, but what you're complaining about is something that Matchroom could have provided had you stayed with them.
The snafu when the judges' scorecards were read, the boneheaded ring announcer who initially announced Nina Hughes as the winner, then corrected himself and announced Shernika Johnson as the winner.
Yeah, it's very bad optics, it is, and disheartening for Nina Hughes, but what's important here is that the right woman did win the fight.
Yeah.
Fuckery aside.
Shernika won.
Remember that we talked about this, that Team Hughes were raising a stink that they didn't want Australian judges scoring the fight. Well, you got what you wanted, but based on what I saw, Australian judge, neutral judge, you couldn't score that fight for Nina Hughes. You couldn't have.
It's just an objective observation.
Leaving Matchroom worked out for Nina the same way that leaving Matchroom worked out for Lawrence Okolie.
No, you don't have to stay there.
Not if you don't want to, though if you leave, whatever happens after that is on you. And if one of your main gripes is that there was no anti-doping testing in the match, what did I say? What do I always say? Nobody else in the industry is spending more money on anti-doping testing than Matchroom, so that's peace of mind you probably would have had if you stayed with them. We then come to the main event of that same card, the Vasyl Lomachenko versus George Kambosos title fight for what was the newly vacated IBF title and a battle of the former champions. I said it beforehand.
I did.
I don't see what George has to keep Vasyl Lomachenko out or off of him. And that's how the fight played out after the first round. In the first round, they were just feeling each other out, fencing with the jabs, throwing punches here and there. But by the second round, which is much sooner,
Loma kicked it into high gear.
sooner than he usually does, because he had already identified that George doesn't have much to deal with him. George Kambosos, who seemed to have been making a conscious effort in the early goings of the match to go to Lomachenko's body. Not a bad strategy. If you want to slow a guy down who's got good legs, you go to the body. And George did.
Several times.
Though still not landing with enough authority. There just wasn't enough on George's punches to get Loma's respect. Like how Lopez got Loma's respect?
George couldn't.
Not a strong enough puncher, not a fast enough fighter with fast enough hands or fast enough feet to offset everything that a 36-year-old Vasyl Lomachenko brought to the table. Very soon in the match, Loma was having it all his way, stepping around George and hitting him with different shots from angles he doesn't see.
Straight left hand was the star of the show.
Lomachenko, being a southpaw, leading with his right in order to set up his left hand, his power hand. He landed that punch many times throughout this fight.
Snapping George Kambosos' head back, poor George, he was out of sorts. He was out of his depth.
Each round being more brutal for him than the last. As the fight progressed, you know how Vasyl Lomachenko is. He does gain steam as a fight progresses, gradually wearing down his opponent, like what he did with Jermaine Ortiz. That's what he did with George, except with George, he actually stopped him, which I said he would, because George ain't got nothing to keep him off or keep him out.
Stopped him with a body shot in the 11th round.
Dropped him once, then dropped him again off a salvo of punches. No surprises here, but it is a credible victory for Loma because George has never been stopped before. He's been in there with Teofimo. He's been in there with Devin Haney. They couldn't stop him. Loma did.
After a year of inactivity,
Gets off the couch, dusts off the boxing gloves, goes in there, stops a guy that's never been stopped. He looked good. He still got it.
and credit to George.
George Kambosos, who after the fight stated, he being Vasyl Lomachenko, is a legend of the sport. I tried my best, but it wasn't enough today. He's one of the best fighters in history, so I'm not ashamed. And he shouldn't be. It would be very easy to disparage George Kambosos based on the lopsided beating that he just took, but I rather accent his courage, that he never ducked a fight, he never avoided a hard fight. He fought Teofimo Lopez, he fought Devin Haney, and he fought Vasyl Lomachenko. All the guys that we've been begging Gervonta Davis to fight, he fought.
So he's missing a few things in his toolbox. He's not missing his nuts.
Not missing his heart like that fucking coward Gervonta Davis. No, I won't disparage George Kambosos in spite of the lopsided beating that he took, because at least he still behaved like a fighter.
Not a coward.
With this, Vasyl Lomachenko becomes a 2-time lightweight champion and a 3-division champion overall. He's back in the winner's bracket, back in the mix for other fights. Post-fight, reigning 3-division champion Shakur Stevenson took to his social media and stated, "Loma can't do nothing with me, I promise you that. That's why they will never let me punch on him the same way they saved Pacquiao from Bud, from Terrence Crawford." I don't really know what exactly set Shakur off.
What triggered him?
Shakur, via his Twitter account, carried out an even more inflammatory comment saying, "Floyd told me years ago, Top Rank don't fuck with black fighters. They just use you until they can't use you anymore. Tonight was them trying to make a statement to me, and I still don't know how to interpret this. It's important to note that this comment has since been deleted, though once again, I don't know what set him off."
Is what he's saying true?
Yes, it is. That's how Top Rank does these guys, but it's not exclusive to black fighters. That's where he's wrong. When Andy Ruiz lost to Joseph Parker in New Zealand, what did they do? They cut him.
When Igis Kavaliauskas lost to Terrence Crawford, what did they do?
They cut him. When Josue Vargas went on his losing streak, what did they do with him?
They cut him.
When Edgar Berlanga was getting too big in the britches and asking for too much but putting out too little, what did they do with him?
They cut him.
Shakur Stevenson feels that this sentiment is exclusive to only one group of fighters, where this is how they operate with everybody. They do use you, they very much do, until they can't, because if they can't, what the fuck are they supposed to do?
It's sink or swim. It always has been.
These fighters and their teams and their management, it's almost like they have it in their head that the promoter is the only one that's supposed to hold up their end of the bargain, when you're supposed to hold up yours too.
And you're not doing that by putting on a performance so bad that people boo you for 36 minutes. It's a harsh reality, but it is reality.
On the heels of that, you're telling anybody that points a mic in front of you that you're gonna try out free agency. But you're not a hot commodity right now. You're not in demand. It's your job to get yourself in demand.
You want to burn bridges before you do that? Go ahead.
A Twitter user that goes by the name Damaged Goods said to Shakur, "Bob said Loma versus Stevenson next, so who's really calling the shots at Top Rank?" To which Shakur replied, "Bob don't got say no more. They're just letting him believe he runs it, but they're taking over his company behind the scenes, a bunch of sharks who don't really fuck with Bob like that."
And I can believe that, but I can also believe that part of the reason somebody else might take the reins is because Bob is 92 years old.
Sooner or later, somebody was going to take the reins. Is the reason Shakur Stevenson is flying off the handle because he saw Lomachenko and George fighting each other instead of fighting him? Is that what his issue is? Because that's a decision that the teams make. You know, Team Lomachenko, Team Kambosos.
That's on them. They make that decision.
I don't know that you could put that on Top Rank if Team Kambosos would prefer to fight Vasyl Lomachenko and Team Lomachenko would prefer to fight George Kambosos. Look at what the circumstances were. Lomachenko was contemplating retirement after the controversial loss to Devin Haney. Team Kambosos, they're looking for a fight they can sell, a fight that will make some more money, and Kambosos versus Lomachenko makes more money than Kambosos versus Stevenson, whether you like it or not.
Why?
Because Shakur Stevenson is boring. That's the part of it that the fighters never like to address. The Nicotila fight, the more recent Edwin De Los Santos fight, those were horrible showings, horrible television fights.
What about what he did at the end of the Oscar Valdez fight? He literally spent the last round doing a victory lap. instead of fighting. He didn't fight till the end. He was literally on ice skates the whole round. The paying customers don't want to see that. The people at home don't want to see that.
And I like Shakur as a fighter. I think he's got a very high ceiling, but he does need to understand the relationship between the fighter, his audience, and how the promoter will behave based on that.
Not just him. Every fighter needs to understand that.
So do we now say, because Team Kambosos preferred to fight Lomachenko instead of Stevenson, that that's Top Rank's fault?
I wouldn't.
Was it Top Rank's fault that Manny Pacquiao didn't fight Terrence Crawford?
No.
According to Manny Pacquiao's longtime trainer, Freddie Roach, Bob Arum was pushing for the fight, but he himself was concerned. It's not a fight that he wanted for his fighter, so in that situation, Top Rank would have made the fight if Manny wanted it, Manny and his team, but Manny and his team didn't want it. So when I think about that,
right,
and I think about this, George didn't want Shakur Stevenson.
Loma didn't either.
I ain't got no hair on my tongue. Vasyl Lomachenko, coming off that controversial loss to Devin Haney, disheartened that the decision was robbed from him. He likely didn't want Shakur Stevenson either. Why would he? Why go in there and fight this guy just to get jobbed again?
This is what he's telling himself.
And this is what I was so angry about. They gave the decision to Devin Haney, who then took the decision and ran. Whereas if the right man would have won the fight, if they would have gave it to Lomachenko, he would have been riding high with the confidence to go straight into the Shakur Stevenson fight. But because he lost and he was so disheartened, that ruined everything.
He was out for a year after that. You saw what he said post-fight. He was contemplating retirement. He only stuck around because his father wanted him to.
In the build-up of this weekend's fight, I questioned Vasyl Lomachenko's morale, his spirit, and whether or not he's got enough fire in the belly to stick around, because we know he has enough talent. We know he has enough ability to beat a George Kambosos, but does he have enough desire to stick around after that?
To fight a Navarrete, to fight a Stevenson.
Does he have enough left in the tank to do that and unify titles with them? Because what you're essentially talking about is another undisputed run. And at 36 years old, after an extended amateur career and all that he's already done in the pros, he might want to pack it up. He might want to retire.
Shakur Stevenson's not going to like that.
I don't expect him to. I don't expect him to like that any more than I expect the audience to like Shakur's minimalist approach to boxing.
I don't expect them to like that either. And I don't expect you to win very many fans doing that.
I'm not proposing that Vasyl Lomachenko shouldn't fight Shakur Stevenson. I'm proposing that Shakur be more level-headed, because there are many moving parts, many interests in play, not exclusive to Top Rank. You're putting it all on Top Rank that two teams decided to fight each other instead of fighting you when that was their decision.
If they go to Bob or they go to Carl or they go to Todd and they say, hey, we want to fight Shakur next.
That if they want to fight you and you want to fight them, the fight gets made. But cool your jets, because the reality of your situation is Javante's not about to fight you.
He's not.
And you want to go on social media making defamatory statements about what is still your promoter publicly.
Two of the other belts are on that side of the street, not counting yours. You need them more than they need you.
And what you want to do is go burning bridges.
Okay.
Try out free agency. Leave Top Rank. Who are you going to end up fighting?
Javante's not going to fight you.
And the only other champions at the weight are Top Rank fighters. What, are you going to move to 140?
If you're not, you better choose your words wisely.